Good morning and welcome to Power Up for Success. I am so delighted to have you here with me on today because we are going to be talking about an interesting subject, and that subject is power. Do you know there is a power that lies within you that it will continue to go unrecognized if you allow it to remain dormant? That's why I'm so excited today about the guest that we have on the show, Miss Melissa Carr. She is coming here to talk to us about transforming trauma, because it takes a power within that is greater than yourself, greater than myself, that will help us teleport ourselves into all that God has created us to do. You know that this is the day, yes, you've heard it many times, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice. We will be glad in it. It doesn't matter how your day started out. Remember, as long as God is with you, your day can turn around. Your day will get better. You will get better. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Better days are ahead for you. And I want you to believe that. Accept that. Why? Because you are a child of the Most High God. And with that, we are going to bring our guest on. We're going to bring Melissa on right now, and we are going to hear from her own words who she is, what she's all about, and how God woke this power up inside of her. And the same God that did it for her is the God that will do it for you. Good morning, Melissa. How are you today?
Good morning, Dr. Marcy. I am doing great. I'm excited to be here with you today. It's just so exciting. Thanks for that warm welcome. It was it was so exciting, refreshing. Yeah. So
look, I have so much to say. I'm going to get to it, but it's just because, first of all, I love the title of your book, Transforming Trauma. And, you know, that's meaning moving from one state to another state, how to turn your pain into power. I'm going to ask you to open up, first of all, and give us a little background about who Melissa Carr is. Tell us that first, and then we'll delve deeper into the book.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So first and foremost, I am almost 50-year young, God-fearing woman of God. Yes. Right. And so I've lived in Delaware for about 40 years, and about 20 plus years of that time has been here in Newcastle County. Mm-hmm. I am a former employee. I'm a former employee of a Fortune 500 corporation. And in that corporation, with the combination of that corporation and prior work experience, I have about over 20 years plus of leadership. With that leadership, I'm a thought leader. And as a result, I am now an entrepreneur. And my very first book, Transforming Trauma, How You Can Turn Your Pain into Power.
Very good. That sounds so interesting. And just to look at you, we would think that you haven't gone through a thing, but I'm sure that you don't look like what you have gone through. And we're going to delve into that a little bit. First of all, and next, I should say, what did God do in your life that brought you to a point where you knew that you needed to document it, that you needed to write it down for others to be able to have access to it?
Yes. So I love this question because, you know, a lot of times we don't, God speaks to us, we don't listen, right? You know, because for whatever reason, we're not listening. Well, God did speak to me. He spoke to me in like one of my darkest moments. It was like I was going through a very difficult time in my life. It was like the first time experiencing even something as traumatic. So during that time, he showed me that I could transform that trauma and that pain, you know, because a lot of times people don't think that they will experience pain. And like you just said, looking at me, it doesn't look like I've been through anything, right? So with that being said, trauma and pain is inevitable. We're all going to experience it at some point in our lives. You know, some more extreme than others, but we will all experience it. So during that time, when he spoke to me, he assured me, he allowed me to believe that I could transform that trauma into power. And with that,
could you be a little bit more specific? Wait a minute. Could you be a little bit more specific about what was that trauma that he had, that you had to hear him through? Could you give us a little bit more specifics? Like it was something that you had to hear him through.
Yes. So I'll share a little bit, because I was trying not to get too much into giving the book away, but I'll give a little sneak peek.
Yeah, just right. I'll just give a little sneak. Tell us.
Yes, this is sneak peek. So basically, part of the trauma was for me. He sat me down for a little bit in 2019. About in April 2019, he had me to sit down for a little bit. So when I say sit down, I wasn't able to work. And keep in mind, I had been working for my corporation for 19 years.
Yes.
So
that's good.
My trauma that transpired through that was a part of me sitting down. So in that time that I was sitting, that's when he spoke to me to let me know that, this trauma, you can turn this into power. And that's actually how I came up with the book title. That's where the concept came from. And then I kind of also like to add this in with that. Sometimes, God would allow things to happen in your life. Like sometimes people question, and this is also a chapter. It's in fact chapter 2 in my book. It's my plan versus God's plan. And like I said, sometimes God will allow things to happen and we don't understand why. We don't know why these things are happening. We question. I will say, because of the way he spoke to me, I did not once question what he was doing in my life. I just basically listened, because I found that whenever those types of things happen, it's always for your good. And he will use you as a vessel in his kingdom. And that's exactly what I felt that he was doing in my life.
God would be using you as a vessel for his kingdom. And I like the part where he says when God sat you down, because I understand about being sat down, because many years ago in my own life, he did that. And sometimes it's necessary. Did you find it necessary? Because among all the things that you were involved in at that time, it was very difficult to hear anything other than what you wanted to hear. And doesn't God come through? That's right. God comes through every time with, I don't want to hear this. This is not what I want to do. This is not the way I want to go. Now, since you knew that it was God's voice, you didn't want to go that way. However, because you knew it was God's voice, what was that turning point? What is it that God ultimately said, and the path that he ultimately put you on that made you really give up and give in to the direction that he was telling you to go?
Yes, ma'am. So I'll tell you, it was, and the reason I knew that it was God's voice is because it was calming. I was at peace. I was at peace, even though in the midst of trauma, I got to a place where I was at peace, because he did tell me that it's okay. If you're obedient to what I'm asking you to do, I will take care of you. And when I say Dr. Marcy, he has taken care of me every step of the way. It's almost 3 years now that I have not been able to work. And he has kept on his promises, and I must keep up on my promise.
All right. Keep up on your promise. So he gave you a calmness in spirit. So you then sat down, I guess, at your typewriter or at your, they have laptops now, your computer, and you started writing the book. Okay. How did you decide where to begin?
Oh, okay, sure. So so right with that, I was actually spending a lot of time out on my deck. Because that was just like a quiet place for me. It was a place quiet, and it was home. I felt safe at home, during this time. And so I spent a lot of time sitting outside, and it just kept coming to me. I had no idea of direction, didn't know it was a book, didn't know a book was in the works, just knew that I needed to do his work. So I was documenting. I started documenting. I was putting so many notes in my phone. I was like, oh my goodness, if I lose this phone, I'm going to lose everything that I've been, thinking that's been happening to me out here on this deck. So I would start, backing up all of my notes because I didn't want to lose it. But again, not knowing that it was a book, did have no idea in 2019 that it was a book, right? So it was just that I just kept documenting and documenting. And again, it was just that calmness that just put me in that at ease.
Well, how did you decide where the book would open, how it would begin? Chapter 1, what was the deciding factor for that?
So that's a great question. Great question. So, and that's a part of my book writing journey. As I started, and I actually was in an amazing program of a book creators class, and I was writing in topics. So I always wrote in topics. That's not the technique that was taught, but that's what worked for me in my writing structure. So I just started writing in topics, and my topics all were like inspirational and documenting my life journey. So thinking about how I got started in that place, it was the foundation of where God put me, which was in that corporation, because that was just it. It was just the foundation. So I started from there. And then as I was going through, and then as I was pulling other interviews in, I just started thinking of other people, other traumatic experiences. So who can I bring in here? Who would be, who would this impact the most out here in the world, especially what we had going on? Because by the time I started writing the book, it was 2021. So now this year, so we had already gone through the pandemic. So I knew like, okay, we had this going on. We had a lot of mental health going on. Suicide, all those things happening, divorce, all in the midst of a pandemic. So that's how I just started writing in my topics and then making my interviews and getting quality, conversations. And all of those individuals have, triumphed from their pain.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you are just joining us, we are talking with Melissa Carr, who is the author of Transforming Trauma, how to turn your pain into power. And we're going to delve a little bit deeper in the second half of this show. But for now, I just want you to know that the power lies within you. We do not want to keep it dormant. We want to unleash what God has put in you. And that's the purpose of this particular interview, because we want to encourage your heart today. We want you to know that greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. If you are inspired by this interview, we want to hear from you. Please write to us. At the Power Up Network, please do. Our address is 500 Garrison Court, Unit 203A, Newcastle, Delaware, 19720. So we're going to come right back in just a moment, and we're going to finish this dynamic interview. Stay tuned.
Prayer is our pipeline to God. And let's face it, we all need prayer from time to time. If you are standing in need of prayer, please contact us through our prayer line 909-318-7015. We have 24/7 prayer warriors available for you, so you can call at any time. God wants to hear from you. He wants to meet your need today.
Okay, now, Melissa, we have gotten to this part in the interview where we want you to share with us, the viewing audience, about how the pandemic has affected you both positively and negatively.
Yes, I can definitely speak to both positively and negatively. I mean, obviously for each and every one of us, when we had never seen anything like it. I mean, like I say, I'm almost 50 years old and I never experienced a pandemic, so in my lifetime. So of course there was a level of panic, paranoia, anxiety, like all those emotions just bubbling up at once. And, just to, especially, when you were watching the cases, they were just rising. They were rising by the day, by the hour, actually. And then to have to be placed on a lockdown. So when we went on that lockdown, it's like, okay, for me, now listen to what I'm going to say here. For me, God was already preparing me for that lockdown, because if you remember, 2019 is when he sat me down. So 2019, I was already seated. I was already prepared to sit home and expect what it was like being home. So whereas so many people were like just not accustomed to being at home, but I was already prepared to be at home. And I felt that that was a way of God saying, again, reminding me that he was going to take care of me through the process. Right. And then although we had those restrictions during the lockdown, so where we couldn't go anywhere, it gave us, I think it gave everyone an opportunity to sit, to be seated. You can pray, you can meditate. A lot of people got really creative, including myself. I was even more, my creative juices were just flowing. And just an opportunity for us all to appreciate the value of life more. Just appreciating. And, a lot of times we express gratitude. Gratitude is just when that holiday time comes, that holiday season. But to me, gratitude is 365 days of a year. And that's what I saw. And I began to appreciate life even more.
Is there one particular element in the book that was difficult for you to get through, difficult for you to express? If you could relate to that for just a moment, because sometimes pain is not that easily dealt with when you're, quote unquote, exposing yourself. Would you speak on that for a couple of minutes or so?
Yes. So, and that's a really great question, because when I was writing, and just like it said, journaling is therapeutic. So when I was writing this book, it was therapy for me. Although I was in a better place. I felt that I was healed so that I could put this story out here, because I had to share my story. I had to be vulnerable. I had to give up some information that no one knows, that no one knew anything about.
Yes.
So I'm a very private person. And like you said earlier on, when we started up the show, that I don't look like that I went through something, right? And that's how I still remained looking as I was going through. It was, there was work that I was doing on the inside. So as I was writing, I was feeling that therapy that I needed. And when I was sharing my actual story and what happened to me, when I was sharing that, it was difficult. I would take breaks if I needed to and come back to it, because I could write at my leisure, so it was a time. And that's what I share that with anyone that's on a book journey, or even if you're going through a traumatic experience. Journaling is very therapeutic. So as you're writing, you're actually feeling what you went through, and it's okay to feel that, and just don't get stuck in it. So that was the only difficult part for me, was, again, like I said, sharing my story. But I felt that, wow, I felt proud of myself. Every stroke, every time that I would pick that back up, I was very proud, because I was like, okay, I'm really healed. I'm getting through this.
Well, sharing your story, I've heard you say that you were sat down, which of course meant you lost a job. You were out of that job. Is that what you're referring to as your hard place, the hurt, the fact that you had been in corporate America and then all of a sudden it was snatched away from you or taken away from you? Is that hard place that you're talking about? So
a little bit more. So I was out on disability. In April, I found that I have an unseen disability. Okay. So I suffer with chronic illness. Okay, so that's a part of the story as well. So as a result of being out, okay.
So you're suffering with something that's chronic now. That's good. Now I'm getting somewhere because people need to open up. They need to identify with, because someone listening right now might say, oh my gosh, I'm suffering with a chronic illness and I'm about to lose my job, or I've just lost my job because of this. Let me hear what she has to say. And by the way, that leads into how they can get your book, how they can start reading for themselves those things that you have journaled, those things that you have lived through the pain and through the hurt and through having to sit down and then being isolated. Just tell them how they can get their book and how specifically it's going to speak to them? In what areas? Like if I was sitting home, like going through something, and tell me how, if I'm one of those people that can benefit from your book.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, my book, I will publish December 21st, 2021. Yay. And my book will be available on Amazon, Kobo, and any places that you can purchase books online. And you can also, I like to say, for more information regarding that, you can follow me on my social media platform, especially Facebook, because obviously things change. Things change in the world. So just like I said, we went through a pandemic, we shut down, but anything can happen. But I am scheduled to publish December 21st. Okay. So once you, and I did want to tell you, Dr. Marcy, for having me on the show today, I'm going to make sure that you get a free copy, a free signed copy of my book once I publish. Oh, my goodness. and also, and how you benefit from this. It's not just my story. There's stories from other people that have gone through divorce. There's people that have survived, breast cancer survivor. I have an individual that I interviewed. Their mother was death by suicide for the mother. So there's suicide, breast cancer, divorce. And not just a regular divorce, but it's an interesting story of what happened, betrayal. There's some betrayal in there. So, and how we intertwine betrayal can happen in all sorts of, that's an emotion in trauma, betrayal. Because a lot of times when things are happening to us, what do? We start like blaming ourselves, thinking we did something wrong. We thought we were good friends with someone and they did this to us, and they weren't there to support us, whatever that may look like for you. Also, there's some conversation about grief, trusting the process. There is a process of grief when you go through traumatic experiences. And all of this, the ways that I maneuver through and I share with the world, because my book is not just for women. My book is for men and women, because a lot of times we forget about the men. We don't think they need self-care or self-help. They do. They're human as well. They have feelings. They go through trauma. They go through traumatic experiences. So I have a toolkit that I've provided to the world that you can dip into my toolkit, or you can, if my items from my toolkit doesn't work specifically for you, you can try them. They don't work specifically. Then you can kind of incorporate your own, but just using that as a baseline and looking at something from a different perspective.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Now, while we're waiting for your book to come out on December the 21st, how would one get in touch with you now? How would you like us to reach out and reach you while we're waiting for that book?
Absolutely. So a couple ways. You can, Facebook is I'm on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. However, Facebook is my main platform. That's where I have my most followers. That's where I do a lot of my everyday motivation, inspiration, and sharing documenting the journey of the book. So you can find me there, and it's under my name, Melissa Carr. Or you can email me at beyond, that's BEYOND, inspiration, INSPIRATION, 409 at gmail.com. And that's my direct email. I will have a website up soon, and I can provide more information on that as well. But right now, those are the two main places that you can reach me.
Absolutely. We're going to get you to repeat that in just a second, one more time before we close out. But I just want to let the TV audience know that we have been talking with Melissa Carr here, who's author of Transforming Trauma. And it has just been an amazing, amazing interview. And we want you to be in contact with her. She's going to tell you again in just a moment how to reach her. But I would like to share with you that we do have Power Up does have a 24-hour prayer line, 909-318-7015. If you need prayer for anything, anytime, day or night, please feel free to pick up that phone and call. Someone is manning those phones 24/7. We want you to get the help that you need and the encouragement and the inspiration that you need. So with that, I want to come back to Melissa, and if you can give us maybe in about a good 30 seconds, what advice would you leave behind? What advice would you tell someone who is suffering right now in some traumatic type situation? What would you say to them?
So I would say, first and foremost, I would offer you to, pray about what's going on, what's happening in your life, have that quiet time, and also to understand that we have choices. When we go through traumatic experiences. We all have choices, and we have to make a decision. We can lay down, crawl under bed, and get stuck in that trauma, or we can come out and try and figure out ways that we can push forward. Try different things. Reading. Google has a lot of information out there. Just read and journaling and all those things, and just never give up. Never give up, because in this, you're not alone. You're never alone. We all go through something at some time or another. And if you need a support group, reach out to in your community and get connected with the support group. And I also will say, if you need counseling, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because I know there's a stigma around that, but go out there and get that. It's just talking to a third person to get that, have that interaction from outside of your circle. Because a lot of times if we stay within our circle, we don't get what we need. So we get that third party person, and then we're able to get what we need.
All right. Thank you so much. And we're going to put your email address up so that any individual that has been watching the show today that wants to get in touch with you, they will be able to reach you by email and also on your Facebook platform. So I thank you so much for being my guest today, and I wish you every success with your book. And there you have it. This is Dr. Marcy Bryant signing off this week for Power Up, and we want to encourage you to be all that God has called you to be. God bless.